The Vorthak hunting fleet moved through the darkness of space like silent death itself. Their ships, sleek and predatory, had terrorized 1,000 worlds across the galaxy. Captain HFY stood on the bridge of the flagship Bloodseeker, his forearms crossed as he studied the tactical display. His species had evolved from apex predators on a world where only the strongest survived, and they had brought that same ruthless efficiency to the stars. "Another world falls to our might," announced his second-in-command, Veltar, as green flames consumed the cities on the planet below. The Vorthak had perfected the art of planetary conquest over millennia. They would arrive without warning, overwhelm any defense forces with their superior technology, and then systematically hunt down every sentient being on the surface. It was not merely conquest they sought, but the thrill of the hunt itself. The bridge crew watched with satisfaction as their scanning equipment detected the final life signs winking out across the continent. This had been the Kalari homeworld, a peaceful civilization that had barely achieved spaceflight. They had tried to surrender within hours of the Vorthak arrival, offering tribute and submission. But the cosmic hunters, as they called themselves, had no interest in subjects or slaves. They lived for the hunt, and every species they encountered became prey. HFY's mandibles clicked with pleasure as he reviewed their latest tally. In the past cycle alone, they had eliminated 17 different species across 12 star systems. Each conquest had been easier than the last, as word of their approach spread terror ahead of them. Most civilizations either fled their homeworlds or huddled in their cities waiting for the inevitable. A few tried to fight back with primitive weapons and outdated tactics, but none had lasted more than a few days against Vorthak superiority. The hunting fleet consisted of 300 vessels, each one a masterpiece of destruction. Their technology was advanced beyond anything the younger species possessed. Energy shields that could deflect nuclear weapons, plasma cannons that could glass entire cities, and sensors so precise they could track a single heartbeat from orbit. The Vorthak had spent millions of years perfecting their craft, and they considered themselves the ultimate predators in a galaxy full of prey. "Set course for the Outer Rim territories," HFY commanded. Intelligence reports spoke of new civilizations emerging in that region, species that had not yet heard the terrifying legends of the cosmic hunters. Fresh prey was always welcome, especially after such an easy conquest. The Kalari had provided barely an hour of entertainment before their pathetic resistance collapsed entirely. As the fleet prepared to enter hyperspace, their long-range sensors detected something unusual. A small probe had been monitoring their activities from the edge of the system, hidden behind a debris field. When they turned their attention to it, the probe immediately accelerated away at speeds that should have been impossible for such a small craft. Most interesting of all, it had been transmitting everything it observed to somewhere beyond their sensor range. "Shall we pursue, Captain?" asked Veltar, his hunting instincts immediately aroused by the thought of prey that might actually run. The idea of a chase added excitement to what had otherwise been a routine extermination. HFY considered the options carefully. The probe's technology appeared more advanced than anything the Kalari possessed, which meant another species had been watching their hunt. This could mean either a new challenge or simply another easy target. Either way, it warranted investigation. "Track the transmission vector," he ordered. "We hunt whatever sent that probe." The navigation computers quickly calculated the probe's likely destination based on its transmission patterns. The data pointed toward a small system on the very edge of civilized space, containing a single yellow star and several planets. According to their galactic database, the system was inhabited by a species that called itself human. The entry was marked as a recent addition to the catalog, suggesting they had only recently achieved interstellar capability. What made HFY's blood sing with anticipation was the notation that these humans had been involved in several minor conflicts with other species, apparently winning through unconventional tactics rather than superior technology. This suggested they might actually fight back, providing the kind of sport the Vorthak craved most. Too many species simply surrendered or fled, robbing the hunters of their greatest pleasure. "Interesting," HFY mused as he studied the limited data available. "These humans seem to have some fight in them." Intelligence reports suggest they have defeated the Rigelian Empire in 3 separate engagements, despite being technologically inferior. The crew exchanged excited glances. A species that could defeat the Rigelians even in small skirmishes might provide genuine entertainment. The Rigelians were not particularly advanced by Vorthak standards, but they were competent enough warriors that victory against them required some skill. "How long until we reach their system?" Zexhai asked. 18 cycles at maximum hyperspace velocity, came the reply. "Excellent. Begin preparation protocols. I want every weapon system checked and rechecked. If these humans are truly different from our usual prey, we must be ready for anything they might attempt." As the mighty fleet entered hyperspace, none of the Vorthak suspected they were about to encounter something that would fundamentally change their understanding of what it meant to be a predator. The humans they were hunting had been preparing for their arrival since the moment that probe had transmitted its data, and unlike every other species the cosmic hunters had faced, humanity had a very different concept of what constituted prey and predator. The hunt was about to begin, but for the first time in their long and bloody history, the Vorthak might discover they were not the only apex predators in the galaxy. Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the command center of Luna Base, watching the holographic display that showed the approaching Vorthak fleet. The probe's data had given humanity exactly what they needed: detailed scans of enemy ship configurations, weapon capabilities, and most importantly, their tactical patterns. While the cosmic hunters believed they were pursuing easy prey, they had no idea they were flying into the most elaborate trap in human history. 18 hours until they reached the outer defense perimeter, reported Colonel Martinez from the tactical station. All fleets are in position and maintaining radio silence. The humans had spent the last 3 weeks preparing for this moment. Unlike previous species that had faced the Vorthak, humanity had something their enemies didn't expect: time to prepare and the wisdom to use it effectively. The probe hadn't just been observing. It had been specifically designed to be detected and followed, drawing the hunters exactly where humanity wanted them. Chen reviewed the battle plan one final time. 300 Vorthak ships against nearly 2,000 human vessels didn't seem like fair odds, but that was exactly the point. The cosmic hunters had grown overconfident from millennia of easy victories against unprepared civilizations. They expected their superior technology to carry them through any engagement, just as it always had before. "Status report on the stealth deployments," Chen requested. "Ghost Fleet is in position at coordinates 77 Alpha, came the response. "All ships are running silent and invisible to conventional sensors. Captain Williams reports his squadron is ready to execute Phase 1 on your command." The Ghost Fleet represented humanity's newest innovation in space warfare. Each ship was equipped with experimental cloaking technology, reverse-engineered from captured alien tech, combined with human engineering that pushed the limits of what was possible. More importantly, they carried weapons specifically designed to exploit the weaknesses humanity had identified in Vorthak shield technology. But technology alone wouldn't win this battle. The real advantage humanity possessed was something the Vorthak couldn't quantify or prepare for: the human ability to think outside conventional tactical doctrine. While other species fought predictable battles using established strategies, humans had a talent for improvisation that bordered on the impossible. "What's the status on Operation Minefield?" Chen asked. "Deployment completed 6 hours ago," Martinez replied with a grim smile. "The entire approach vector is seeded with surprises they won't see coming. Each mine is equipped with adaptive AI that will adjust targeting based on real-time threat assessment." These weren't ordinary mines. Human engineers had designed them to appear as natural space debris until the moment of activation. More cleverly, they were programmed to analyze each target before detonating, ensuring maximum damage to the most critical systems. The Vorthak would find their shields, weapons, and engines under simultaneous attack from directions they never thought to defend. Chen walked to the observation deck and looked out at Earth hanging in space below. Every major city was evacuated, their populations safely hidden in underground bunkers that could withstand orbital bombardment. The Vorthak would find no helpless civilians to hunt on the surface. Instead, they would discover that every human settlement had been converted into a fortified position, bristling with defensive weapons. "Ma'am, we're receiving reports from the outer colonies," announced Communications Officer Davis. "The Mars garrison confirms all civilians have been relocated to the deep tunnels. The asteroid mining stations have been converted to weapons platforms as planned." This was perhaps the most crucial difference between humanity and the Vorthak's previous victims. Other species had tried to protect their populations by hiding them or evacuating them to distant worlds. Humans had done the opposite. They had turned their entire civilization into a military force. Every colonist was trained in warfare, every settlement was a fortress, and every civilian facility had been weaponized. The Vorthak expected to find scattered, terrified populations easy to hunt down and eliminate. Instead, they would encounter a species that had spent generations learning to fight wars across multiple worlds simultaneously. Humans didn't just build cities. They built them with the assumption that someday they might need to defend them against impossible odds. Admiral, long-range sensors are detecting the Vorthak fleet dropping out of hyperspace at the edge of the system, reported the sensor operator. They're maintaining standard formation and approaching at moderate speed. No indication they suspect anything unusual. Chen nodded approvingly. The enemy was acting exactly as predicted, following the same tactical patterns they had used against dozens of other civilizations. They would approach the inhabited worlds, establish orbital dominance with their superior firepower, and then begin systematic elimination of ground targets. It was a strategy that had never failed them before. Begin Phase 1, Chen commanded. Signal the Ghost Fleet to commence harassment operations. I want them to think they're dealing with a conventional defense force. Across the solar system, hidden human ships began to reveal themselves in carefully orchestrated displays of apparent desperation. They attacked the Vorthak fleet with hit-and-run tactics, making their technology appear only slightly more advanced than previous species the hunters had encountered. The goal was to reinforce Vorthak confidence while gathering real-time data on their combat responses. The psychological aspect of the battle was just as important as the technological one. Humanity needed the cosmic hunters to remain convinced of their superiority, until the moment when that confidence would become their greatest weakness. Every engagement was designed to appear like the desperate resistance of an outmatched civilization rather than the opening moves of a master strategy. Enemy fleet is maintaining course toward Earth, reported Martinez. They're taking the bait perfectly. No deviation from predicted approach vector. Chen allowed herself a small smile. The Vorthak had made the same mistake that had doomed so many predator species throughout Earth's history. They had focused so intently on their prey that they had failed to notice when the roles suddenly reversed. In nature, even apex predators could become prey when they encountered something they didn't understand. Time until they reached the primary engagement zone? She asked. 14 hours and counting. Chen turned back to the tactical display where thousands of small lights represented human forces positioned throughout the system. Each light represented crews who understood they were fighting not just for their own survival, but for the survival of every other species in the galaxy. The cosmic hunters had terrorized the universe for too long, and humanity intended to show them what it felt like to be the ones being hunted. Captain HFY studied the tactical display with growing irritation. The human resistance was proving more persistent than expected, though still well within acceptable parameters for eventual victory. Small squadrons of human ships had been harassing his fleet for the past 6 hours, striking from long range before retreating when his forces moved to engage them. It was the kind of delaying tactic he had seen before from species trying to buy time for evacuation. Their technology is slightly more advanced than initial reports suggested, observed Veltar, reviewing combat data from the recent skirmishes. Their ships are faster than anticipated, and their weapons have greater range than our database indicated. HFY dismissed the concern with a gesture. Irrelevant. We have destroyed 43 of their vessels while losing only 2 of our own to lucky shots. Their resistance merely prolongs the inevitable and provides us with better sport. What the Vorthak captain didn't realize was that every human ship they had destroyed was exactly where Admiral Chen had expected it to be destroyed. The sacrifice squadrons had volunteered for their missions, knowing they were trading their lives to maintain the illusion that humanity was fighting a conventional defensive battle. Their heroism was buying time for the larger strategy to unfold. The Bloodseeker and its escort fleet had just passed the orbit of Mars when the first phase of humanity's real plan activated. What appeared to be empty space suddenly erupted with weapons fire, as dozens of concealed defense platforms revealed themselves. Unlike the previous skirmishes, these attacks were precisely coordinated and devastatingly effective. Shields down to 60%. reported the Vorthak weapons officer as energy beams hammered their formation. Multiple impacts on the port escort ships. The Ravenclaw has lost primary propulsion. Zexhi's mandibles clicked in surprise. The humans had somehow managed to hide significant military installations in what their sensors had indicated was empty space. More concerning, their weapons were specifically calibrated to exploit weaknesses in Vorthak shield harmonics that should have been unknown to any other species. Return fire. "Destroy those platforms immediately!" he commanded. The Vorthak fleet unleashed its devastating firepower on the revealed positions, reducing the hidden bases to glowing debris within minutes. But the damage had been done. Several escort ships were severely damaged, and more importantly, the attack had forced the fleet to expend significant energy reserves and ammunition. "Scan for additional concealed positions," Zexhi ordered. "These humans are more cunning than anticipated." What he didn't know was that the platforms had been designed to be destroyed. Their real purpose wasn't to inflict major damage, but to force the Vorthak fleet to reveal the full capabilities of their weapons and defensive systems. Hidden human sensor arrays were recording every detail of enemy combat performance, data that would prove invaluable in the battles to come. As the fleet continued toward Earth, they encountered increasingly sophisticated resistance. Human ships emerged from hiding places that should have been impossible to conceal in, inside asteroid fields, behind planetary rings, even disguised as space debris. Each encounter followed the same pattern: sudden, precise attacks followed by tactical withdrawal before the Vorthak could respond effectively. "They fight like cowards," growled Veltar after another hit-and-run engagement. "They refuse to stand and face us in honorable combat." Zexhi wasn't so certain. The human tactics were indeed unconventional, but they showed a level of strategic thinking that was unsettling. Every engagement seemed designed to achieve specific objectives beyond simple damage infliction. The humans were learning from each encounter, adapting their tactics in real time, and somehow staying one step ahead of Vorthak countermeasures. "Sir, we're detecting massive energy signatures from the direction of Earth," announced the sensor operator. "It appears the humans are powering up planetary defense systems." The display showed Earth surrounded by a network of orbital stations and defensive satellites. Unlike the hidden platforms they had encountered earlier, these installations made no attempt at concealment. They hung in space like a declaration of defiance, their weapons pointed directly at the approaching Vorthak fleet. "Finally," Zexhi said with satisfaction, "they have decided to make their stand. Signal the fleet to assume attack formation. We end this now." But as the cosmic hunters moved into their traditional assault pattern, something unexpected happened. The human defensive grid didn't wait for them to get within optimal range. Instead, every platform and satellite opened fire simultaneously at maximum range, filling the space between Earth and the approaching fleet with a wall of energy that seemed impossible to penetrate. "Evasive maneuvers," Zexhi shouted as his ship bucked under multiple impacts. "How are they generating this volume of fire?" The answer became apparent as his sensors provided more detailed analysis. The humans hadn't just built defensive platforms. They had somehow linked them into a single massive weapons system that could focus the combined firepower of hundreds of installations on any target within range. It was a level of coordination that required technology the Vorthak had never encountered before. More disturbing was the realization that the humans were using weapons, technology that seemed specifically designed to counter Vorthak defenses. Their energy frequencies bypassed standard shield configurations. Their targeting systems predicted Vorthak evasion patterns with uncanny accuracy, and their rate of fire exceeded anything in the galactic database. "Status report," Zexhi demanded as his ship's lights flickered from power fluctuations. "Shields at 30% and falling," came the grim response. "Multiple escort ships reporting critical damage. The Deathstalker has lost main power and is drifting." For the first time in his long career as a cosmic hunter, Zexhi felt something he had never experienced before: uncertainty. The humans were not behaving like prey. They were fighting with the tactical sophistication of a species that had been preparing for this specific battle for years rather than days. "Sir," called out the communications officer, "we're receiving a transmission from the human fleet." "Put it through," Zexhi commanded, curious to hear what these strange creatures had to say. The voice that came through the speakers was calm, confident, and spoke in perfectly translated Vorthak. "Attention, cosmic hunters. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Human Defense Force. You have entered our territory with hostile intent. We offer you one opportunity to withdraw peacefully. You have 60 seconds to respond. Zexhi's laugh was harsh and bitter. These humans think they can threaten us? Send our reply, the Vorthak do not retreat from prey. But even as he spoke the words, a small part of his mind wondered if perhaps, for the first time in their species' history, they had encountered something that wasn't prey at all. Admiral Chen received the Vorthak response exactly as expected. The cosmic hunters had never retreated in their entire recorded history, and pride would prevent them from starting now. Their reply was typical of a predator species that had never encountered effective resistance. Arrogant, dismissive, and tactically predictable. Begin Phase 2, she commanded from the Luna Base Command Center. Signal all fleets to commence Operation Beehive. Across the solar system, human forces that had been carefully positioned and hidden for weeks suddenly revealed themselves in a coordinated display that fundamentally changed the tactical situation. What the Vorthak had assumed was a small defensive force protecting a single world was actually a massive military machine spread across multiple planets and moons. The asteroid belt, which had appeared empty except for mining operations, suddenly erupted with weapons platforms that had been disguised as mining equipment. The moons of Jupiter revealed themselves to be heavily fortified military bases with firepower that rivaled planetary defense systems, even seemingly innocent space. Stations throughout the system transformed into combat platforms with devastating offensive capabilities. "My God," whispered one of the Vorthak sensor operators, as his displays struggled to process the sudden appearance of nearly 2,000 human vessels. "Where did they all come from?" Zexhi stared at the tactical display in disbelief. The numbers were impossible. His intelligence reports had indicated a minor spacefaring civilization with perhaps 50 warships. Now his sensors showed a military force larger than most galactic empires could field, appearing from locations that should have been impossible to use as concealment. "This cannot be accurate," he said, his voice lacking its usual confidence. "Run full-spectrum diagnostics on all sensor arrays." But the diagnostics confirmed what his instruments were telling him. The humans had somehow hidden the largest military fleet he had ever encountered in plain sight throughout their solar system. Every piece of civilian infrastructure had been designed with dual military purposes. Every asteroid had been hollowed out and weaponized, and every planetary body harbored defensive systems that were now revealing their true capabilities. The human strategy became clear as their forces moved into coordinated attack formations. They weren't fighting to defend their territory. They were fighting to eliminate the Vorthak threat entirely. The seemingly random harassment attacks from earlier had actually been carefully planned maneuvers to drive the cosmic hunters into the perfect position for complete encirclement. "Sir, we're surrounded," reported Veltar, his usual composure cracking as he processed the implications. "Human forces are closing from all vectors. We're in the center of a spherical formation with no clear escape route." The realization hit Zexhi like a physical blow. The Vorthak fleet wasn't approaching prey. They had been herded into a trap by hunters who understood warfare on a level his species had never imagined. Every tactical decision they had made since entering the system had been anticipated and manipulated by human strategists. "All ships, emergency combat formation," he commanded. "Concentrate firepower on the weakest sector and punch through their lines." But as the Vorthak fleet attempted to break free from the encirclement, they discovered that humanity had one more surprise waiting for them. The human ships weren't just more numerous than expected, they were also far more advanced than any intelligence reports had suggested. Human vessels began demonstrating technology that seemed impossible even by advanced galactic standards. Ships that could phase in and out of normal space to avoid incoming fire. Weapons that could bend space-time to strike targets from impossible angles. Energy shields that didn't just absorb damage but somehow redirected it back at the attackers. "How are they doing this?" demanded Zexhi as his flagship shuddered under attacks that seemed to come from empty space. "This technology is beyond anything in our databases." What the Vorthak captain didn't understand was that humanity had been preparing for this confrontation since their first contact with galactic civilization. While other species had shared technology freely through peaceful trade, humans had been quietly reverse engineering everything they encountered and improving upon it with Innovations that no one else had considered. Human scientists had taken the basic principles of alien technology and pushed them to extremes that their original creators had never imagined. They had combined technologies from dozens of different species in ways that created entirely new capabilities. Most importantly, they had developed these innovations in complete secrecy, ensuring that no potential enemy would know what humanity was truly capable of until it was too late. "Sir, the Bloodclaw and Storm Reaper have been destroyed," reported the tactical officer. "Enemy fire is penetrating our shields with increasing effectiveness. They seem to be adapting their weapons in real time to counter our defenses." This was perhaps the most unsettling aspect of the human attack. Their weapons weren't just powerful, they were intelligent. Each shot that struck Vorthak's shields provided data that was instantly analyzed and shared across the entire human fleet, allowing every subsequent attack to be more precisely calibrated for maximum effectiveness. The Vorthak had always relied on their technological superiority to overwhelm less advanced civilizations. Now they found themselves facing opponents who could not only match their technology, but improve upon it faster than they could adapt their tactics. Every defensive measure they employed was analyzed, understood, and countered within minutes. "Emergency hyperspace jump," Zexhai ordered desperately. "Get us out of this system immediately!" But as his navigation officer attempted to engage the hyperdrive, nothing happened. The human fleet had somehow deployed a field that prevented faster-than-light travel, trapping the cosmic hunters in normal space where they couldn't use their traditional escape tactic of retreating to hyperspace when faced with unexpected resistance. "Hyperspace engines are non-functional," reported the navigation officer with barely concealed panic. "They've created some kind of interference field that's blocking our jump calculations." Zexhai felt the first real fear he had experienced in centuries of hunting. The Vorthak were trapped in a battle they couldn't win against an enemy they had completely misunderstood. For the first time in their species' history, the cosmic hunters found themselves in the position their prey had always occupied, surrounded, outgunned, and fighting for their very survival. "Sir, incoming transmission from the human fleet," announced the communications officer. Admiral Chen's voice filled the bridge once again, still calm but now carrying an unmistakable tone of authority. "Captain Zexhai, your fleet is surrounded and your escape routes are blocked. You have killed billions of innocent beings across dozens of worlds. Your reign of terror ends here. Surrender now, and your surviving crew will be treated according to galactic conventions for prisoners of war. Continue fighting and we will demonstrate why humanity is no longer prey." The offer of surrender was something no Vorthak commander had ever received before. It was also something no cosmic hunter had ever been forced to seriously consider. Zexhai's response was exactly what Admiral Chen had predicted. The Vorthak captain's pride wouldn't allow him to surrender, even when faced with impossible odds. His reply came through the communications channel filled with the same arrogance that had characterized his species for millennia, though now it carried an undertone of desperation. "Humans, you may have superior numbers, but we are Vorthak. We have conquered 1,000 worlds and eliminated species more advanced than your primitive civilization. We do not surrender to prey." Chen nodded to her tactical officer. The cosmic hunters had made their choice, and now humanity would demonstrate what happened when predators encountered something higher on the food chain. Initiate Phase 3. Show them what humans do to monsters that threaten innocent civilizations. The change in human tactics was immediate and devastating. Where before they had been containing and surrounding the Vorthak fleet, now they began a systematic dismantling of enemy forces that was both precise and ruthless. Human ships moved with coordination that seemed almost telepathic, each vessel knowing exactly where every other ship would be and what it would do next. The Vorthak found themselves facing something they had never encountered before, an enemy that fought with the same cold efficiency they had always used against helpless civilizations. But there was a crucial difference. Where the cosmic hunters killed for sport and pleasure, humanity fought with the focused intensity of a species defending not just their own survival, but the freedom of every other civilization in the galaxy. "Sir, they're targeting our weapon system specifically," reported the Vorthak tactical officer, as human fire began disabling rather than destroying enemy ships. "They're not trying to kill us, they're taking us apart piece by piece." This realization was perhaps more terrifying than facing immediate destruction. The humans were demonstrating a level of tactical control that allowed them to precisely target individual ship systems while leaving the crew compartments intact. They were proving that they could destroy the Vorthak fleet at any moment they chose, but were instead methodically removing their ability to fight back. Zexhai watched in horror as ship after ship in his fleet was stripped of its weapons, engines and defensive systems by surgical strikes that left the hulls largely intact. The humans weren't just defeating the cosmic hunters, they were humiliating them by demonstrating complete tactical superiority without resorting to the wholesale slaughter that the Vorthak themselves would have employed. How are they maintaining such precise targeting while maneuvering at combat speeds? Veltar asked, his voice filled with disbelief. This level of coordination should be impossible for any organic species. The answer lay in humanity's greatest tactical innovation, the integration of artificial intelligence with organic intuition in a way that no other species had achieved. Human commanders made strategic decisions while AI systems handled the split-second tactical adjustments needed to execute those strategies with superhuman precision. It was a partnership that combined the best aspects of machine calculation with human creativity. But perhaps more importantly, the human fleet was fighting with a unity of purpose that the Vorthak had never seen before. Every ship captain understood not just their own role in the battle, but how their actions affected the entire strategic picture. They fought not as individual hunters seeking personal glory, but as part of a coordinated organism dedicated to protecting innocent life throughout the galaxy. Sir, the Shadow Killer and Darkwind have been disabled, came another report. All primary systems offline, but life support remains functional. They're being boarded by human forces. This was the most shocking development yet. The humans weren't content to simply defeat their enemies. They were actually capturing Vorthak vessels intact. Such a tactic was virtually unheard of in galactic warfare, as most species considered the cosmic hunters too dangerous to take alive. What are the humans doing with the captured crews? Zexhai demanded. Unknown, sir. Communications with disabled vessels have been severed. The humans appear to be jamming all signals. What the Vorthak didn't know was that captured crew members were being treated according to strict human military protocols that emphasized dignity even for defeated enemies. The humans understood that how they treated their prisoners would be observed by the entire galaxy, and they intended to demonstrate that Earth's defenders were nothing like the monsters they were fighting. As the battle continued, it became clear that the Vorthak fleet was being systematically dismantled by opponents who understood warfare on a level they couldn't comprehend. Human tactics were unpredictable yet effective, combining innovations from Earth's own military history with advanced technology in ways that created new paradigms for space combat. Sir, we've lost 60% of our fleet, reported the tactical officer, his voice barely above a whisper. Remaining ships are experiencing cascading system failures. The humans appear to be using some form of electronic warfare that's affecting our computer networks. Zexhai stared at the tactical display where his once mighty fleet was being reduced to helpless hulks by an enemy that seemed to anticipate every move before he made it. The humans weren't just technologically superior, they were fighting with a tactical sophistication that suggested they had been studying Vorthak methods for years and developing specific countermeasures. How long until our remaining ships are completely disabled? He asked. At current rates of attrition, less than 2 hours, sir. For the first time in his career as a cosmic hunter, Zexhai faced the unthinkable reality of complete defeat. His species had ruled the galaxy through fear and superior firepower for countless generations, but now they had encountered a civilization that was everything they thought themselves to be, only better. The humans fought with the efficiency of natural predators, the coordination of a hive mind, and the technological innovation of a species that had spent centuries learning from everyone they encountered. They were what the Vorthak had always claimed to be, but had never actually achieved: the ultimate hunters. As his flagship's systems began failing under coordinated human assault, Zexhai realized that the age of cosmic hunter dominance was ending. The galaxy's most feared predators had finally met their match, and the irony was that their conquerors were the same creatures they had dismissed as primitive prey just hours earlier. Sir, incoming transmission from Admiral Chen, announced the communications officer. Chen's voice carried no triumph or cruelty, only the calm authority of a commander who knew the battle was already won. Captain HFY, your fleet is defeated. Further resistance will only result in unnecessary casualties among your remaining crew. I ask you again, will you surrender and allow your people to live, or will you force us to complete their destruction? The bridge of the Bloodseeker fell silent as HFY faced the most difficult decision in Vorthak history. Around him, his surviving crew waited for orders that could determine whether their species would have any future at all. The great cosmic hunters who had terrorized the galaxy for millennia were now at the mercy of the very creatures they had come to hunt. Veltar approached his captain carefully, speaking in a low voice that wouldn't carry to the rest of the bridge crew. Sir, we have 18 ships remaining in fighting condition. If we concentrate all our firepower on a single vector, we might be able to break through their lines and escape to hyperspace range. HFY considered the option, but his tactical experience told him it was futile. The humans had demonstrated complete control of the battlefield from the beginning. Any attempt to escape would likely be anticipated and countered before it could succeed. More importantly, such an attempt would result in the deaths of the remaining crew members under his command. Sir, we're receiving damage reports from across the fleet, another officer reported. The humans have been remarkably precise in their targeting. They've disabled our offensive capabilities while leaving life support and basic systems intact. Casualty reports indicate they're actively avoiding hits on crew quarters and medical facilities. This information was perhaps more disturbing than the tactical situation itself. The humans were fighting with a level of restraint that the Vorthak had never shown to any of their victims. They possessed the capability to annihilate the cosmic hunter fleet completely, yet they were choosing to minimize casualties even among their enemies. They fight like no species we have ever encountered, HFY said quietly. They show mercy to those who have shown none. Through the bridge viewports he could see human ships maintaining their positions around the disabled Vorthak vessels. They weren't moving in for the kill as any sensible predator would. Instead, they waited patiently for a surrender that they could easily force but chose not to demand through continued violence. Sir, long-range sensors are detecting additional human fleets arriving from the outer system, reported the sensor operator. It appears they have significant reserves that weren't even committed to this engagement. The implications were staggering. The force that had defeated the mighty cosmic hunter fleet represented only a fraction of humanity's total military capability. The humans had won a decisive victory while holding back additional resources that could have made the battle even more one-sided. HFY realized that humanity's tactical approach revealed something profound about their nature as a species. They possessed overwhelming military power, but chose to use only what was necessary to achieve their objectives. They could have destroyed every Vorthak ship in the opening minutes of the engagement, but instead had fought a careful battle designed to minimize casualties on both sides. Captain, Veltar said urgently, we must make a decision. The humans are demonstrating remarkable patience, but they won't wait forever. Around the bridge, the surviving crew members looked to their captain for guidance. These were veterans who had participated in countless hunts across the galaxy, warriors who had never known defeat or even serious resistance. Now they found themselves completely at the mercy of opponents who were proving more honorable than the Vorthak had ever been. HFY activated the fleet communication system, knowing that his next words would be broadcast to every surviving cosmic hunter in the system. The decision he made would echo through Vorthak history and potentially determine whether his species had any future beyond this moment. Attention all vessels, he began, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. We have encountered an enemy unlike any in our experience. The humans have demonstrated tactical superiority, technological advancement, and strategic thinking that exceeds our own capabilities. More significantly, they have shown mercy to defeated enemies, something we have never offered to our victims. He paused, looking around the bridge at crew members who had spent their entire lives believing in Vorthak supremacy. For the first time in our history, we face opponents who are superior to us in every aspect of warfare. They have proven that we are not the ultimate predators we believed ourselves to be. The admission was painful, but HFY knew it was necessary. The Vorthak had been living a lie for millennia, believing their own propaganda about racial superiority while never encountering anything that challenged their assumptions. The humans had shattered those illusions in a single engagement. I have a choice to make, he continued. I can order us to fight to the death in a hopeless battle that will accomplish nothing, accept the extinction of our species. Or I can acknowledge that we have been defeated by superior opponents and accept the consequences of our actions. Through the communication system, he could hear the shocked reactions of his crew as they processed what their captain was saying. No cosmic hunter had ever spoken of surrender or defeat. The concepts were so foreign to their culture that they lacked proper words to express them. The humans offer us terms that no Vorthak commander has ever been forced to consider. They offer us life when they could easily take death. They offer us treatment according to galactic law when we have ignored such laws for millennia. They offer us a chance to survive when we deserve none. Zexhai looked directly at the communication pickup, knowing that Admiral Chen would be monitoring this transmission. I, Captain Zexhai of the Cosmic Hunter Fleet, formally surrender to the Human Defense Force. We submit to your authority and place ourselves at your mercy. The words felt strange in his mouth, but also carried a weight of finality that was somehow liberating. The great lie of Vorthak superiority was ended, and with it, the terrible responsibility of maintaining their reign of terror across the galaxy. All ships are to power down weapons and prepare to be boarded by human forces, he commanded. Any crew member who resists will be considered to have violated my direct orders and will face consequences accordingly. As the last Cosmic Hunter weapons went offline, Zexhai realized that this moment marked more than just the end of a battle. It was the end of an era in galactic history. The universe's most feared predators had been humbled by a species that had spent centuries learning to be better than their enemies, rather than simply stronger. The age of the Cosmic Hunters was over, and the age of humanity was about to begin. 6 months after the Battle of Sol, as historians would later call it, the galaxy was a fundamentally different place. Admiral Chen stood in the council chambers of the newly formed Galactic Peacekeeping Alliance, looking out at representatives from 47 different species who had gathered to witness something unprecedented in galactic history, the trial of the Cosmic Hunters. The proceedings were being broadcast across thousands of worlds, allowing civilizations that had lived in terror of the Vorthak for generations to witness justice finally being served. More importantly, they were seeing that the humans who had defeated the galaxy's greatest predators were choosing to handle their victory through law rather than vengeance. Zexhai stood in the defendant's dock, no longer wearing the elaborate armor of a Cosmic Hunter captain, but simple prison clothing that marked him as what he had always truly been, a criminal. Around him sat the surviving members of his fleet, nearly 3,000 Vorthak warriors who had participated in countless acts of genocide across the galaxy. The evidence against the defendants is overwhelming, announced Judge Kalara, a respected legal scholar from the Andromedan Council. Testimony from survivors of 17 different worlds, forensic evidence from destroyed civilizations, and the defendants' own records all confirm their participation in acts of systematic genocide spanning over 2,000 years. Chen had spent months working with legal experts from across the galaxy to ensure that the trials followed proper procedures recognized by all civilized species. Humanity could have simply executed the captured Cosmic Hunters or imprisoned them indefinitely without trial, but that would have made them no better than the monsters they had defeated. Instead, they had chosen to demonstrate that even the galaxy's most feared criminals deserved due process and fair treatment under the law. It was a principle that many species found difficult to understand, given the magnitude of Vorthak crimes, but it was fundamental to human concepts of justice. Captain Zexhai, Judge Kalara continued, addressing the former Cosmic Hunter directly. You have heard the evidence against you and your forces. How do you respond to these charges? Zexhai rose slowly, his forearms hanging at his sides in a gesture of defeat that was unmistakably genuine. The months in human custody had changed him in ways that went beyond mere physical confinement. For the first time in his life, he had been forced to confront the reality of what his species had done to countless innocent civilizations. Your Honor, he said, his voice carrying none of its former arrogance, I do not contest the charges. Everything presented against us is true. We are guilty of every crime described in these proceedings, and of many others that will never be documented because we left no survivors to bear witness. A murmur ran through the assembly. Many had expected the Vorthak to maintain their defiance even in defeat, but the reality of facing superior opponents had fundamentally changed their perspective on their own actions. I speak not in defense of our actions, but in acknowledgement of their true nature, Zexhai continued. For millennia, we told ourselves that we were apex predators exercising our natural right to hunt lesser species. We believed our own propaganda about genetic superiority and evolutionary destiny. He paused, looking directly at Admiral Chen, who sat in the observers section. The humans showed us what we truly were. Not superior beings, but bullies who had never faced opponents capable of fighting back. They defeated us not through cruelty or hatred, but through superior tactics, technology, and most importantly, moral clarity. Chen found herself oddly moved by the former enemy's words. The transformation in Zexhai and his crew had been remarkable to witness. Faced with opponents who treated them with dignity despite their crimes, many of the Vorthak had begun to question everything they had believed about themselves and their place in the galaxy. The humans could have destroyed us completely, Zexhai said, his voice growing stronger. They possessed the power to eliminate our species as thoroughly as we eliminated so many others. Instead, they chose mercy. They chose justice. They chose to be better than we ever were. Judge Kalara nodded gravely. The court acknowledges your admission of guilt and your apparent remorse. However, the magnitude of your crimes requires appropriate consequences. This tribunal sentences the surviving members of the Cosmic Hunter fleet to life imprisonment with the possibility of rehabilitation. The sentence was actually more lenient than many observers had expected. Several species had called for the complete execution of all captured Vorthak, arguing that they were too dangerous to be allowed to live. But humanity had argued successfully that even the worst criminals deserved the chance to change, provided they could never again threaten innocent civilizations. The defendants will be relocated to a secure facility where they will spend the remainder of their lives in productive labor, contributing to the reconstruction of worlds they helped destroy, the judge continued. They will be provided with education about the civilizations they eliminated, so that they may understand the true cost of their actions. Chen stood as the proceedings concluded, knowing that this moment marked the beginning of a new era in galactic politics. The defeat of the Cosmic Hunters had done more than eliminate a single threat. It had proven that even the most seemingly invincible predators could be stopped by species willing to work together for the common good. In the months since the battle, dozens of civilizations had approached humanity seeking alliance and mutual defense agreements. The Galactic Peacekeeping Alliance was growing rapidly, uniting species that had previously lived in isolation and fear. For the first time in galactic history, there was hope that military might could be used to protect the innocent rather than exploit the weak. As representatives from various worlds approached her with congratulations and thanks, Chen reflected on how much had changed since that first probe had detected the approaching Vorthak fleet. Humanity had entered the galactic stage as a minor species, seeking only to defend their homeworld. They were emerging as leaders of a new alliance dedicated to ensuring that nothing like the Cosmic Hunters could ever threaten peaceful civilizations again. Admiral Chen called out, Ambassador Tavara from the Centauri Federation. My government wishes to formally request human assistance in establishing defensive protocols for our outer colonies. We understand that humanity has developed new tactical doctrines that could benefit all alliance members. Chen smiled, knowing that this was exactly the kind of cooperation that would make the galaxy safer for everyone. Of course, Ambassador. Humanity believes that our knowledge belongs to all species dedicated to protecting innocent life. As she looked around the chamber filled with representatives from dozens of worlds, Chen realized that the Cosmic Hunters had inadvertently accomplished something they never intended. By forcing the galaxy's peaceful species to unite against a common threat, they had created the foundation for a new era of cooperation and mutual defense. The predators who had terrorized the galaxy for millennia were now nothing more than prisoners serving life sentences. In their place stood an alliance of civilizations committed to ensuring that bullies and tyrants would find no safe harbor among the stars. The age of fear was over. The age of hope had begun.